Hello and welcome to another episode of The Zoo. I'm Alpha Violet, and with me is Chris Rickson and Jeff Maloney. Together we're going to tackle the issues of IT in a modern world. Welcome to the show, Jeff. What was that?
This is my little man I bought in Tokyo about a decade ago. It's about as non-technical as you can get. It's just one of those things where its head bobs back and forth when it hits sunlight.
That's pretty technical.
Really? That's pretty cool.
It's supposed to like make you peaceful, right? You just stare at this head bob back and forth all day.
Very zen. I like it.
That's how I stay very zen on the job.
and Jeff, you just became a dad again.
I did. My wife had another baby girl 7 days ago or 6 days ago. So
congratulations.
Sleepless nights and a lot of burping and a lot of changing of diapers.
Mm.
And Chris, you getting ready for Guy Fawkes?
Yes, it's Guy Fawkes Night here in the United Kingdom, where we celebrate a failed attempt to destroy Parliament. So, there are any loud explosions during the recording. Hopefully it's just fireworks.
Let's start with you, Jeff, today. You recently launched something we refer to as Smarter Service Desk at BMC Software. What's that?
We did. The Smarter Service Desk is really two solutions when you look at it, and one you're very familiar with is My IT, and the other is what we call Smart IT with our Remedy ITSM application. And with the Smarter Service Desk is providing both sides of the service desk, meaning the business users who would leverage something like My IT, and the IT users on the service desk that would leverage something like Smart IT, a better experience in their day-to-day jobs. An experience that makes them more knowledgeable, makes them more collaborative, makes them more productive to perform some sort of action in the service delivery world.
When you say better user experience, give me an example. What does that mean?
So the better user experience, yeah, and you can chime in from My IT, but from a Smart IT perspective, if you look at traditional enterprise applications, they're basically green screens or a form placed around green screens, right? So we had green screens back in the day. We had a whole bunch of functions that you perform some sort of action or some sort of process. Then we decided to have client-server forms, which is just a bunch of gray, blocky type forms with rectangles. And then we moved on to web-based forms in the internet, where now we have basically the same form. It just has rounded edges and is published in an HTML type format. The experience now of what we're adopting is a lot of formless-based interactions with the users. And why do we have that? We have that from our consumer-style-based applications, right? When we go and interact with all different types of companies, we don't have to fill out endless amounts of forms. We post something, we put information out into the world, and then we retrieve something back through formless-type technology. So that experience of what we adopted in the consumer-style formats have been placed now into our IT-based applications, where we're getting rid of the mundane, outdated, form-based, process, overly complex type applications, and we're intertwining them with a greater experience, a much more intuitive experience that the user, whether it's a business user or an IT user, can experience with the application to perform their day-to-day jobs.
So it's a little bit like bringing the goodness of Facebook and Twitter and whatever modern apps, you know, Angry Birds, bringing that to the hardworking IT guy.
Yeah, it's really funny. It's when you look at your mobile device. I was looking at my wife's yesterday as I was trying to change her over devices, and she had 55 applications. And she has 55 applications because they're very easy, they're very intuitive, they're providing her some sort of knowledge or information or some sort of capability to do something at her personal life. And the reason she has 55 of these things because they're all adding some kind of value, and it's very easy and intuitive to work with. Right? Whereas if you look at our business applications, that's sort of reverse. We have a small set of business applications that aren't necessarily providing this sort of great intertwined experience that we can have to do an action on the day-to-day.
Yeah.
Chris, I was going to ask you, Chris, do you think that's where we're heading in the future? Are we going to have these simple consumer-like modular apps rather than big systems? Chris?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. I think the value of apps is that they are function specific, and in our world that really means role specific. If you're talking about service management, and you know, over the years, I think the solutions have got more and more role specific. But apps allow you to take that one step further, to deliver an entire working environment that somebody could comfortably sit in front of for 8 hours a day and do their core function, and then fire up another app if they need to do something else. I think that's a very contemporary model. It's extremely scalable and flexible. I absolutely think it's the future. Whether it's delivered in a native app or in some smart self-rendering client like HTML5, doesn't matter. The principle's the same. So I think it's the first. I first wore a headset in 1990 on the service desk. That's 24 years ago. This is one of the first real, I think, tangible advancements in the working environment. Yeah, we've had successive improvements up until now, but I wish when I was cutting tickets on a mainframe green screen on a system called Solve, it was brutal. And took easily as long as the call that you closed to log the ticket. So I wish this kind of thing was around back then. So I'm really excited by it.
That is interesting. Having spearheaded the my IT efforts, I've realized how hungry people are for modern technology, if you will, right? And we're going forward faster and faster and faster, which is a must. Because I use my 2 teenage daughters as litmus tests as what works and does. They don't use email. They don't use calendar. When we introduce Office Outlook to them, they're going to look at you, okay, what is this? Is this the machine that sends notification? Because that's all they want. They don't want to know how things are going to be. They just want to have something that's very easy to work with, something that's sexy, lack of a better word, something that makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense immediately, they're not going to learn it. Then you obviously fail them. It's like, how do I drink milk? If that's a problem, you're not going to drink milk. And that's how they see technology. It's not this thing. It's part of them. It's part of the world. They don't know a world without technology. And if we don't adjust to it, we're going to miss a huge market opportunity. So very, very glad that you guys got that smart IT out because it's the great complement for the My IT, which is really for business users, right? For giving the IT guys who are really driving this thing and the back end, giving them the same experience. I think it's a wonderful step forward. And talking about modern technology, I always want to share, I've always been a little bit skeptic too, but for the last few weeks I've been wearing this thing. It's quite primitive compared to the other stuff. And it's the whole quantification. And I wanted to touch on that for a second because I think connecting something like this and our phones to business systems and creating more of a cognizant computing world where it's no longer amazing that the system knows what we want and predict what we want. Is actually common, day-to-day business. About the privacy of it. For example, what I learned from this is I sleep like a cat. Like I'm amazingly well asleep, but I never move. If I don't go running, which I try to do daily, I don't barely break 5,000 steps a day because I sit here and I work. Have you guys ever tried any of these? Have you ever quantified yourself and tested it?
I have a Lumoback. That helps with basically with your posture. So I won't turn around and show it to you because I don't want to take my clothes off on camera. But it's a very similar thing to Fitbit, where it keeps track of your sleep. It keeps track. Mostly the purpose of it is for your posture, because people like me just kind of hunch over like this, and so it buzzes at you every time. It kind of tells when you're hunched over. But also at the same time, it does things like Fitbit. It counts the amount of steps and the sleep and whatnot. So
you wear it on you like a belt, or? Yeah,
it's like a belt. They have a belt version, then they have a little version where you can pin to your lapel that actually can tell your posture, right? So it's an interesting tool. I like that. I'm not a big fan on the Fitbit to count number of steps and that kind of stuff, but from a posture perspective, it's great.
How about in Wales?
I think it won't surprise you to know, Alf. I think this is not good. I think that nature has equipped us very nicely with one of the most sophisticated sensory networks anywhere, as far as we can tell. And I think what we suffer from is the collective attention deficit. And I think that if we're quiet enough and still enough for long enough, both physically and mentally, think all the information that you need to understand your state and shift your posture and see how fast your heart's beating and all the rest of it, it's all there if you're prepared to do it. What I don't like, and I realise this is hugely subjective, and I realise that I'm a total curmudgeon on these things, so you just have to, that's just my deal. But I think that I worry about the quantification of things that have been nicely beyond quantification. I think that part of the mystery of existence and just what it's like to be, I'm not sure how much value we get from measuring that and pulling it into yet another part, another extension of the commercial world. I think is hugely unfortunate. I think technology has its place. It's very, very helpful where it's helpful. This feels a little bit to me like a problem that didn't need solving.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be abused. Right now, if you want health insurance, you have to fill out surveys. You have to give blood work too and stuff like that. Soon they're going to give you one of these, and you have to walk around with that for a week, and then they determine what your premium is going to be. Luckily, and this is the thing, I gave one of these to each of my daughters to see how much I move around, and my oldest one, she moves around quite a lot, 25, 30,000 steps a day. My youngest one, I knew she was 6, so the first few days I knew the number was going to be low. Well, they were quite high, because she's figured out how to rig it. So she sit there and shake it. And I was wondering, what's next? They're going to strap it onto the cat and chase the cat around a while?
They strap it onto the dog.
Yeah.
So it's when I talk about modern technology, we talk about how we as human beings tend to lie spontaneously. Like we lie in surveys, we lie to ourselves, we lie to people around us. And this is supposed to be an objective truth. Well, it will take us about 5 minutes to figure out how to rig this, because we can't handle the truth, so to speak. So,
how far away is our healthcare system from taking a Fitbit and figuring out premiums? Though I've been to the doctor a lot because of the baby, right? And I go into the doctor's office, and what I'm just enamored with is the wall of files. Right? It's like Alf and Chris and Jeff. It's just like there's antiquated from that perspective that there's no way that they're ever going to take that file-based system and say, okay, now we're going to shift fully over to quantified self, and we're going to be able to figure out premiums and whatnot from that. And maybe 50 years from now, but nowhere in the near future.
I don't think it'll take 50 years, but I hope you're right, my friend. I do hope you're right. Talking about the future, by the way, this whole thing, social media, apparently staying for a while, which is great. But it's starting to create a digital elite, or a social media elite at least. For example, recently got invited to Elo, I think that's how you pronounce it. And it's the coolest social media network on the internet, apparently, because it has no advertisement. It is extremely nicely designed. It's so cool I couldn't even figure out how some of the features worked. But it's like a nightclub, a really cool nightclub. There's no one there. And I don't really know what to do in there. You, Jeff, noticed that at YouTube they are also creating segregation between the haves and the have-nots, pushing the haves up further up. What was that?
So being in LA, we have there's YouTube studios down the street, and it's interesting for YouTube. They said if you have 10,000 subscribers to your channel or above, and you're not affiliated with some sort of known entity, for example, you're not building Ford, you don't represent a Ford or somebody else out there, is you can use the studios for free. So that's their elitism. If you have 10,000 subscribers to your YouTube channel and you don't have some sort of big individual or a company backing you, you can go in there and use all of the services for the studio for free, which is huge, right? Because the cost of getting studio time is just astronomical, and then to have that at free and at a whim, just produce everything that you can through YouTube, I find interesting at one point in time, but also elitism at another.
Chris, you are a thought leader, and I don't see that lightly. You're really one of the smarter people when it comes to articulate what we really mean. How do you use social media to get a bigger readership? Or do you? Yeah,
I do. I would definitely not fall into the category of the digital elite. I am at best in the digital masses, I think. It's an increasingly important channel. A lot of people work with it. That makes it very difficult to cut through the noise, I think, unless you are a sort of validated corporate account with tens and tens of thousands of followers. But it also won't surprise you to know that I find the whole thing deeply upsetting. Yeah, huge. A philosopher, a very wise philosopher, characterized this whole thing as the shared festival of the self. And I think that's really interesting. I think the obsession people have with being liked in digital form and a manufactured storefront for who they are, etc. I think if it isn't already causing significant challenges, I think it will downstream. Again, I think this is something we're going to need to learn how to use effectively over time. I think that this is very interesting time in history. Traditionally, technologies, if you look further back, took quite a while to develop and mature, and society had somewhat of an opportunity to shift and adjust, and once that initial shock of the new was over with, we kind of worked out over a period of years what it meant. It feels like all those time cycles are being compressed or missed. And every day there seems to be a new headline about, well, here's another unintended consequence of people having democratic access to broadcast media. And so, again, I'm not totally down on this one, but as always, I kind of like to take the long view, in terms of historical perspective, and I think we've got a way to go before we understand what it is that we've actually built here.
And that's really why we're doing the zoo, because I think that over the years we've learned that things getting faster and faster, and just as you said, I do find it interesting or terrifying that we try to compress into a few weeks what Dostoevsky and those guys took an entire lifetime to deal with, this radical shift, and anything from religion to social norms, economy to politics is all turned on its head and is happening. The show is to deal with IT in a modern world. It should really be the world in modern IT, but it is how it is. I really appreciate you taking the time to join the zoo again today. For all out there, take care, be safe, bye-bye.